All right, we have made it to episode 9 of the SBG podcast, and today I would like to welcome my next guest, Donna Guidry. Is it Coulon or Coulon? I meant to ask you before we got on how you pronounce your last name.
It's good. It's good radio. It's Coulon. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's Coulon.
Okay.
My father-in-law, so when I met my husband, actually, I didn't, for the first several months we were together, I didn't know how to pronounce it either. And when we started getting serious, his dad was like, it's Coulon. Like, you cool off, you cool on. So I was like, oh, okay, that's how I remember it. So still to this day, I have to think about it, though. My little boy's awards ceremony just recently, they're like, Rowan Coulon? I was like, it's good. It's perfect. It's pretty great.
It makes you tougher in life if you have to endure
I love
that.
It. It's accurate, actually.
Yeah.
Coulon for us, it's pretty accurate for the whole family. It's just our vibe, so it's good.
So I met Donna through my wife's styled shoot that she did. You're like the third guest that I've had on that I was able to get, networking from that. So that's pretty
cool.
interesting.
That's cool.
And you were doing the videography thing over there mostly, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And so that is your main hustle right now.
Main hustle, yeah. So I actually I've been in so many different industries over the years, but, I started in, I had a career in radio, I had a career in dance, I had all these different things that I was doing. I always loved photography, videography, and then it kind of fell in my lap. And yeah, it became my main hustle after several years of kind of doing it on the side while I was in radio. And then when I left that career, I was like, you know what? This is what I love doing. So I'm just going to try to do this and not have to replace that income with any other thing. I didn't want to have another boss that wasn't me. So yeah, I decided I was just going to go full force with Evermore Stories, and that's what we did.
How did it feel to take that leap and then it actually work out in your favor?
Okay, so I was scared to death. I also didn't know what we were going to do because my husband was also helping me with that's what he did for me whenever I was working full time. He was in between jobs, so he was actually helping me as a second shooter for the video side of things. So we started it kind of together. And so when I decided to switch my career, we decided to do it together. So it wasn't just one of us going full time. We decided to both jump into the business full time. So there wasn't a second income from my husband either. Yeah. So there was this very scary pivotal point where we're okay, we're just gonna do it. And so yeah, we decided, and it was super scary at first, and I was deathly afraid, especially because I'm not very good at, I'm not a salesperson, so trying to, sell myself or go out there and, hustle business, I was like, how in the world am I going to do that? Thank God for social media and, all the online things, because otherwise I don't know how we would have survived, but we did it, and I'd, tripled my income in the first year and a half.
Cool.
From where I was.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and my husband helped me get it off the ground. We worked together, and then once it was solid and I was able to start pulling other staff members in to do different things for me within the company, he was able to go back and do something he was passionate about. So
nice.
And yeah.
So did you have people lined up, when you took the leap, did you have customers, I guess, lined up for whenever you were going to start, that you had some padding, you didn't have to do a bunch of from scratch cold call? So
I did, yeah. So whenever I decided to start, so Evermore Stories began, I actually, started my DBA in 2017, right after my husband and I got married. I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And by happenstance, so we started a video company. I have a lot of great friends who do photography, and I did photography too. It's actually how I started, how I even got into videography at all, was because I had working knowledge of a photography camera. And so whenever I was in broadcasting school, because I at some point wanted to be in radio, I learned a bunch of stuff for, TV broadcasting. In fact, I wasn't actually going to school for radio, by the way. I was actually going to school, if you can believe it or not, to be a news anchor. I wanted to be in TV. That was the idea. I was going to be a news reporter. I did it in high school. I was a Dr. Pepper teen reporter.
Nice.
So I worked with Caleb Wyatt, and it's embarrassing and kind of cringe to say now, but it was so much fun. I had such a blast. And so I did that first, and I was sure that that's what I wanted to do, until I saw myself on the playback, which is so funny because this is videoed, and I was definitely am awkward on camera.
Oh,
and it's so funny. I was man, this is not for me. But I did an internship just before that in radio, and it was hella fun. I was like, man, this is so cool. We get to like play music and go places and MC, and like I just enjoyed that, you know, fun atmosphere. And as it turns out, TV is like high pressure. It's like a lot of like deadlines and crazy, and people are always stressed out and not happy.
Really?
So I was like not into it. But I was already in school for broadcasting, and I got my job in radio, so I was like already there. And by complete accident, because I'd already gone through like all the TV broadcasting classes, I wanted to go back for my master's in advertising. And so you can do that free if you teach at the university. So I started actually teaching videography and TV broadcasting, even though I wasn't going to be in that industry at all anymore, because I realized it was not for me. So I was teaching videography and TV broadcasting at UL for like a few years. And so after we got married, I thought, man, we could do this. Like the industry, the wedding industry, they don't have in Lafayette like this cinematic, you know, wedding vibe yet. Like they don't have a lot of people that are doing it. So I was like, man, if I jump into the market now, it would be really cool to be able to like bring that to Lafayette, or be one of the many that are bringing it to Lafayette at the time before it got too explosive.
You'd be an OG in that field, yeah.
Yeah. And so I actually met some guy out of Texas that did, I mean, he's been shared by Martha Stewart Weddings. Like he's like the real deal. Like he's a movie maker that just so happens to do weddings. And so I met him at a wedding and asked him a bazillion questions, asked him if I could do a mentorship with him. So I did that. So that was right around 2017 when we decided to start the company. I decided to attack videography. And so I started doing like small gigs while I was also working in radio. So my radio job was like 5 a.m. until noon. So it gave me enough time to still work until 5 p.m. on my own projects. So I'd started taking more weddings because I could work on the weekends and like edit a little bit after work and still be with my kids in the afternoons.
Yeah.
And so I started to kind of build up some clientele just by like word of mouth, no aggressive advertising. So when the time did come, we were already at this point where I felt like I couldn't take any more work. Like I was not turning people away, but I was at the point where I was like, I don't think I can take any more weddings if it's not all that I did. And so at that point, whenever I left radio, it was a pivotal point where I had to decide if I was going to slow down with Evermore Stories or if I was going to really ramp up and just make it that decision. So luckily, you know, right at the beginning, I had a few weddings already kind of booked. And so it was just a matter of getting enough to compensate for what I was already doing. And then it just kind of exploded, which was really, really awesome.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So which radio station did you work for?
Oh, I don't even know if I should tell you.
Oh, no?
Because, no. So I worked under a pseudonym for 94.5 KSMB as Carly.
Yes.
So I worked, have you ever heard Bobby Novosad in the morning?
I'm pretty sure I heard you doing that. Now that you said the name, it rings bells pretty much. So when did you start doing that? Because I might have been like...
So I actually did that for 11 years. So I was 21 at the time. I think I graduated sometime, I guess 2011 or so was when I started. And I did that all the way until 2021.
Wow, I totally remember that now that you're saying it. That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I worked alongside Bobby Novosad for many years on like that top 40 station, and that's what I woke up every morning and like did this, like grabbed a mic, and that was this is actually when I'm not thinking about the camera, this is the most comfortable.
It's very
like,
natural.
You know, yeah, it's fun. I like to just. I mean, I spent 4 hours. It's so funny because Bobby Novosad, I know him very well because I would spend more time with him talking a day to him than my own husband. It was like 4 hours every single day where we're just like doing this, and we'd visit and ask questions and talk about, you know, topical news. So, you know, it's comfortable. It feels like it's at home, you know.
Oh, that's
in
great.
front of a mic.
Did y'all ever have to do any kind of like interviews of like celebrities or music celebrities or anything?
Yeah,
Or, like,
I
in
definitely
person?
have. You know, Aaron Carter, he's actually
Yeah.
passed away, brother to Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys. Met him, did an interview with him.
Wow.
A lot of them like were up and coming at the time, so it was like hit or miss. Like some of them would like blow up later and become real famous, and like some wouldn't. But a lot of the people that would come in from like what is that show? The Voice?
Yeah.
Or the contestants from around here,
America's
they would
Got
all come
Talent
in.
and
Yeah,
all
if they
that.
would come in and do interviews with us, we would. I actually have interviewed so many wrestlers. It's like crazy how many wrestlers I've met.
Wrestlers.
Yeah, I don't remember any of their names because I was just not into it. So, but I had to pretend like I was super interested. Like, yes, a wrestler's coming to town. But like one something, Dean Ambrose, I think was one of them. And I told people that I met Dean Ambrose, and so many people were like, "Oh my God, he's such a star." And I'm like, "What? I don't know this guy." Like, yeah, it's so cool. But yeah, so
That feeling of not knowing who a celebrity is, but then after the fact, you tell it to people, and then they're like, "Oh my God." I had that feeling a couple of times in my music career, though it wasn't like super long, I say music career, as the amateur rock star and all that stuff. But
I love it.
We played with High Octane. I talked about it in a previous episode where I interviewed my bass player, but we played with, it was at Grant Street, and we played with a band called Kill Devil Hill, and the bass player was from Pantera, and
that's cool.
The drummer was from Black Sabbath whenever Black Sabbath had Dio in there. And I only really listened to the Ozzy years of Black Sabbath, and I hadn't listened to that, era of Black Sabbath then. And so then this dude got off the tour bus middle of the day, and he like introduced himself, and we were hanging out talking to him, and I was like, man, I know this is substantial, but I just don't know any of your music. And later on, I went and listened to it, and I was like, man, this is so crazy. Like, I should have done research on this guy before, we met him.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. He, like, influenced the title track of that album right there was off of one of the songs that he had done. I'll show it to you after this, but, yeah, fantastic.
That's super cool. I think the biggest celebrity that I ever met, it was actually right when I was about to leave. Bobby knew that I was a big fan of Kane Brown. And I don't know if you know who that is. He's a country musician that like kind of transitioned into pop, but he's gorgeous. And so I definitely Bobby knew I had a huge crush on him. And so we found out he was coming to town, and it was COVID happened. And of course, couldn't go to the show the first time. It got pushed back. Yeah. So right before I left, he had rescheduled. The concert was coming up, and Bobby was able to, he was given access to meet him. They weren't doing like an actual meet and greet because it's like post-COVID, so everybody would have had to get tested. So in fact, we got there and had to get COVID tested on the spot and be negative, otherwise we couldn't meet him.
Wow.
And so because there was no meet and greet like a traditional one, we got to sit with him the whole time. So it's like pre-show, I get to sit down with Kane Brown for like a half an hour talking about his baby and Netflix. It was like really fun. Like, it was so cool. And of course I'm sitting there pretending I'm not in love with him and everything about him. Like, listen, and I'm married, so I mean, I'm not actually, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I was trying to pretend like I wasn't totally obsessed with him.
Not drool too much.
Right. Try to make complete sentences the whole time and not just go,
Didn't that moment where you first put your eyes on this person and then interacted with them in person, it's like, holy shit, this is like a real person. It feels like aliens came down to earth. You're only going to overlap your time with this person this one moment in time right here, and it's like, I'm going to take every second and store it in my brain.
That was probably the only one that I had real wow factor for, just because I actually really was a huge fan. There was other ones that I met. I don't know if you know Panic at the Disco.
Yeah.
Brendan Urie, yeah, I met him. And so that was a fun, that was fun for me. And so I've met so many of them. I just wasn't always a super big fan of whoever I was meeting. He was. I really loved Panic at the Disco. But yeah, it's cool.
That's
awesome.
Cool.
It's cool.
Some perks of it all. So
that's the one thing I miss. That's probably since transitioning into, videography, working for myself. That's one of the biggest things that I miss, is that I'm not out in the public. I don't get to meet as many people or go to those events as much. I mean, I video them, but I'm behind the camera. I'm not as much part of the action. I used to be able to be, on stage or performing or kind of, with it. And so I miss that. And also I'm in a box all the time. I'm by myself. This is the most social activity I have in a week other than my family, because
really?
I'm by myself editing, all the time, other than when I'm at events, but I'm also behind the camera capturing the action, and I try not to talk and mess with what's happening,
I only dabbled. I think I'll have to show you, but I only did I think 2 videos where I was experimenting, even trying out doing a video on that little camera that we have. It's the Nikon, I believe. But yeah, it's different because with photography, you're capturing a moment here and there. But then with the video thing, like you said, it's you're capturing the whole duration of whatever you're trying to hit. So you can't, it's hard to be in the mix when you're doing the thing. But yeah, it's it's totally different. I was before I even like understood the principle of videoing an event, we had the Handycam deal that we were doing for weddings, and that's a cool, fun add-on. It makes it look like a home video and all that stuff, and we'd give the Handycam to the people after the wedding so they get that out of it. But like, such a difference between that and like what you do, and it's like telling a story through the video, and that is an interesting thing in itself that I was learning about.
Well, obviously, I made my career making, talking for a living. So I love storytelling. That was one of my biggest passions in life. Telling a story through dance, which was one of my past careers and a past life, and just always building a story and like retelling, something through movement or music or building something.
Absolutely.
And so when I started doing video, it was actually how I fell in love with it, because when I found out that I could take this, these pretty pictures and use that same, science that I used to make the pretty pictures, but like actually show what's happening, the laughter. There was so much for my wedding. I remember, I have a godchild and a godson and a goddaughter that were going to walk in my wedding, and I was hiding, right? And so I knew they were going to do some cute stuff. They're going to walk down the aisle, and without video, I was not going to be able to experience that the way it happened. And even the photos, like I couldn't see that or hear the church kind of rupture in laughter. And my grandmother was very old. I had no idea how many years I had left with her when she was at my wedding. And so I wanted like video of her laughing. And there's so much of your wedding. So we actually we do everything, but we started in the wedding industry specific. And there's so much about a wedding day that goes by so fast that most people will tell you, like, I don't remember that happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so the coolest part about our company is that we were able to not only document all those things and like salvage that and create a beautiful story that's cinematic in that, 3 to 5 minute feature film that people get, which we do often, but also when you get a package with us, you're getting that raw material too. So I'm a fly on a wall. I'm going to capture, if there's something cute happening, whatever it is, I'm going to be filming, right? Mm-hmm. And so throughout a day, all those different things that are going on, whether it's happening in front of the bride or not, those things that happen on the side that she's not aware of, I'm getting footage of. And at the end of their wedding, after they've a month goes by and they don't remember what's even happened, they get all that raw footage and they're able to go through that archive. And they're like, wow, that's what my day was like. The bride gets to see the groom getting ready, the groom gets to see the bride getting ready, and like see and re-experience that day together. And that's that really sold me on why I wanted to do this specifically, videography.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, so the one, I had done a test video with my dogs and all that stuff, but I was experimenting with the whole cinematic, the 27 frames per second versus the 30 frames per second. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was just me or like the moments that I captured, but both videos that I did, it like hit me in the feels. And I don't know if that's just a product of like how I happened to capture that time, or does it happen most of the time with stuff that you video?
So it's crazy that you bring that up, because I was actually talking about this exact same topic the other day. My husband and I were chatting about it, and with a friend, because it feels like whenever I video, every single time I'm videoing, I'm waiting for like, I'm trying to get all these pretty things, but there's like this magical moment that happens throughout the day. And I don't know if it's God or, whatever that does it. But for me, it's God. But I feel like there's always these God moments that, I just so happen to catch that, like, I never could have planned. Like, something happens that just is magical. Uh-huh. And I notice it in the editing bays. Sometimes I'll be editing and like things will fall just on pace to, I'll throw a piece of video on the track and it'll sync up perfect to the video, like to the music, and the music will like have this crescendo that just goes perfectly. And I'm like, man, like I live for those moments. But there's so many times where, like, if I could tell you, it's like accidental, like, or it's just divine intervention. I'm not sure. Like, I can't take all the credit, truly, because there's so much of my work that I really feel like is just God inspired. Like, it's just, I'm working and like I'm putting things down there, and I move pretty quick, especially because I have a lot of work that comes in and out. And so, yeah, these just magical moments sometimes happen when we're out there filming, and then in the editing bays, like, it almost pieces itself together. Yeah. The story starts to tell itself. And if you're listening, like, especially throughout the day, so I make it a very big point whenever I meet with my couples to know a lot about them. And then I also make it a point to, whenever, I'm on the day of, try to find the moments that they mentioned might mean a lot to them. So if they talk about certain people or talk about certain memories, I try to make sure that I am proactive in trying to look for those moments or create those moments for them. Mm-hmm. So if she, let's say a bride tells me like, this was a really cool, memory. This is how he proposed to me. I may ask a groom, during the wedding getting ready, or a groomsman, and be like, hey, does this groomsman know that story of how y'all were engaged? And so he'll retell it on his wedding day, and I'll take that audio and I'll put that in their film and like throw it in there, and the bride gets to hear it, but from the way he describes it to his friends and like how his friends react, and it makes it special for them.
Yeah.
And so I try to use those moments whenever I'm creating these storylines that are not just authentic to the couple and what's happening that day, but authentic to their story that even happened like preceded that, like so that when they watch it back, it's really a testament to who they are as a couple. So that's my fave.
Some great tips out there for any upcoming videographers right there.
Yeah, listen, and I'm the type of person too, like I'm so an open book. Like I love talking shop. Like
that's
I love
awesome.
Explaining what I do.
And that helps network a lot too, I find, whenever you can like, because there's tons of people that want to learn, right? And then if you have that knowledge base and you can share that, it helps to bring together that collection of people, and then that's all future, connects that you have in that space. I did a similar thing at my work for the video game development thing that I'm doing, where I put on. We have them. They call them LOLs. It's a learning over lunch, and so then they order lunch, and everybody in the company who wants to attend it, we go in the kitchen, the cafeteria, and we gather around. And I made a big PowerPoint. I explained all the ins and outs, basically a high level of like game development, and
Greek. It's Greek to me. I'm like, that's so cool though. Like I would be fascinated to hear about all that stuff.
I can show you some after. It's very interesting. It's in depth, but. So at the end of it, I put on it's called a game jam, and we got people to, if they wanted to participate. And I think we had like 4 or 5 people total that joined, but you had like a week to come up with a game based off of a randomly generated theme, and it came out pretty good. Everybody, it was interesting to see what everybody had in store for the different types of, the genre, what they did for it. And then we all kind of played each other's games at the end of it. But everybody who did it stayed in that group chat, and we all like started sharing different tips and tricks. So it's interesting. It helped me find people that I would have otherwise never found that were interested in that. And I could talk with them, and just being able to like bounce ideas off of people and something that you're interested in, because it's like same with videography, it's like kind of a niche area, right? So then to find people to bounce ideas off of is probably helpful.
Honestly, that was a really cool thing about our community. So in Lafayette, it's different from, I guess, other places. I mean, I'm sure that there are groups and Facebook groups for, every area. But ours, Acadiana, we have really good people that are all willing to, like, help each other out. And so they have a group for, Acadiana videographers, where I was able to, like, jump in and meet a lot of, like, we did a lot of networking where we would meet in person. We would talk about, what gear we were using, or, what kind of approach we had, to be able to break into the wedding industry. And it was really cool because there's such a big community. And I was able to hire out, like, so I would work for other people within there. So if I had like a slow weekend and somebody needed a second shooter, we would like work for each other.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
So it was really cool because I felt like photography. So I was in, I became a photographer as well, and we do that, of course. And now I feel like that community is a lot bigger and supportive. But when I first came in, it was almost like strange. Like I was like walking on turf that I shouldn't have been. Like, it was like very
Who is
weird.
this newbie?
Yeah. And it was hard to find respect, and it was hard to, jump in and I don't know. It was just like I felt like I didn't belong. Like I felt like an outsider in the photography industry when I first started. And video, it wasn't like that at all. Like everybody was like really open, and most of us are like creatives, so we're artistic and strange and weird and quirky. I mean, I know I am. And so it was really cool to like meet all these different personalities and then work with each other and work for each other, and watch everybody else's business kind of grow. And everybody that was there in that community, because we were building each other up, everybody started doing even better in their businesses because we weren't competing. We were just helping each other build better businesses. Yes. And the truth is, even in small communities, I mean, there's enough business. You know what I'm saying? You're going to find the business. It's going to come to you. And I much prefer do it that way, having a community where we're building each other up rather than competing with each other. Yeah, it's just not my vibe. I'm not that person. I'm not going to compete for business. You can have it. I'm just not that person. So it's been cool. It's been cool to have that community, especially because a lot of those people still work with me and for me. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the networking and action, because you never know what opportunities could come about that you wouldn't have had access to, or the knowledge, and just this interaction right here. You'd be on this podcast, and then later on down the line might end up having somebody hit this video, and then you get, notoriety from that or something. That's a big part. That's a moment that I'm actually looking forward to, is to hear a report back from somebody that actually knows, hey, this person heard, my spiel about my business on the show, and then, you get it, end up getting more.
That would be cool. Yeah, for sure.
So if that does happen, do let me know.
Absolutely. I absolutely will. Yeah.
So you said you did a bout in dancing. How was that?
Oh my goodness.
Would you like to talk about that?
It's funny that I just posted a reel about it on Instagram today, and you can find me actually at Evermore Stories Weddings is what we are on Instagram, which I probably should change at some point, but we have such a big following under that. But now we do everything from weddings and personal stuff to a lot of commercial stuff too. But anyway, so I'll get there. But I just posted a post today about life coming full circle. So of course I started in the wedding industry, and that's what I knew I could break into at the time. When it came to, being a videographer, that was the first thing that seemed lucrative. So I was like, oh yeah, wedding videography, it makes sense. But now that I've been in this business for a while, especially in 2020 when weddings were not happening, I had to diversify. As a production company that was doing media, I had to reconsider. And, I have an audio background. I have all these different backgrounds. One of the backgrounds that I had was in dance. So I actually directed a dance studio for 7 years. It fell in everything that I've ever done. It falls in my lap. I swear when I tell you there has to be a God up there somewhere just puppeting things for me, because I was a dancer. I loved dancing. And I was a talented choreographer, a talented dancer, not the most talented in the room by far though. As in, if I decided to start my own dance school, which I would have loved to do, and I did enjoy, I don't think it would have been very super successful, because as a single person, I would not have been able to be all these talented dancers come work for me. They'd have been I'm better than you. You know what I'm saying? I was not the most talented dancer in the room. I was talented, but not the most talented in the room. And I didn't go to school for it, It wasn't what I expected to happen.
Did you have the imposter syndrome?
Definitely. Yeah. So I still do that for everything. It definitely is. We could talk the whole podcast on that. It'd be the whole topic. But I had a friend of mine, and his mom had opened a dance studio a few years before that, 3 years before I met her. And, I was from Cecilia. This friend of mine was from New Iberia. We met at a 4-H camp, in high school, and became pen pals. That was when MySpace became a thing. So we were MySpace friends. We get into each other's top 8s at some point.
It's official then.
Yeah. And so he was just this cool dude from New Iberia. We ended up hitting it off and becoming friends, eventually best friends. And his mom had a dance studio, and the director that she had, she also started the dance studio because there wasn't one in her town. Her son and her daughter loved to dance, and there was no place for them to dance without having to go somewhere else. And she legit just had this whim and opened a dance school, and she had zero dance experience, which is funny because I was that's why I wouldn't have started school, because I was nobody would come dance for me if I don't have dance experience. Wrong. So she hired somebody as her dance director. She opened this business, and that person who directed for Jenny ended up leaving because she realized she could do it herself and wanted to. So she wanted a little bit more freedom and control in the company. So she left. And Jenny was without a director and needed teachers, because a lot of people, when they schismed, kind of, went to the other school. And so Tyson was like, listen, you're a dance teacher. I'd pulled him. I was choreographing somebody's senior solo at the dance school where I was teaching in Cecilia. It was my little cousin's solo for her senior year. They do a big by yourself kind of production when you go to graduate from dancing. And so I called Tyson and was like, hey, you dance. She needs a male to like do some lifts and things with her. So like I think it'd be really cool. So he came all the way. He knew that I did choreography and dancing. So he called me to bail out his mom and was like, hey, we need teachers. So I ended up living in his mom's house because it was an hour away from where I lived. And so I ended up living in his mom's house like 3 nights a week while I was in college, like teaching for her. The first year I just taught. They had hired a different director, and then after that year, she had a baby. It was crazy. They needed a director again, and the parents liked me, and so I somehow fell into the director's position at 20 years old, directing a dance studio. And when I tell you directing, so let me tell you what's involved in directing a studio. You're not just teaching, okay? You're directing the studio. You are like in many ways the head choreographer for whatever classes you're teaching. And I had half the studio was mine because there weren't that many teachers at the time. So I'm like doing this while also in school. It was total chaos, but I loved it. Like I lived for it. It was great. But when you're also planning the costumes, the lights, you have to like meet with the production guy. Like you have to hire the videographers. You got to like do all the things for a show. Cause once a year you do this big production where everybody shows it off. So I'm at 20 years old running this business, trying to marketing, branding. Like I'm very bad at it, by the way, because I'm 20 years old.
Crash course.
I don't know who in the world, these parents are paying big money to this woman for me to teach their kids dancing and run this business. And I'm not, at the time, I was not a business minded person. Like it was the first time I was ever doing this. And so I don't know how it even happened. I'll be honest. It was definitely by the grace of God, but I loved it. I lived for it. We did it. For a solid 7 years, I was directing the business. At year 10, it was our last year. Unfortunately, the friend that I mentioned that I ended up over there for, he had ended up having cancer, and he passed away at 27. And it was really hard. Like the Jenny, his mom, couldn't keep the studio open after that. Her kids were older. Her other daughter was older, and he had passed. So she offered for me to buy it. I'd already started considering video and photo, and I was in school and doing radio, and it didn't feel right, so I didn't stay with it. But my post is about how now, because we diversified in 2020 and we started doing these other things, people knew that I have a dance background, and now I do videography. And so now we're doing a lot of dance shows is what we're doing now, which is really cool because it's this like merging of two really big passions and really big parts of my life together. And so they're coming together and kind of colliding. And it's so cool because I get to not only video the pre-show stuff, so the kids getting ready, people talking about the dances and like practicing backstage and like being part of that like hype of the show, which was I live for that, like the stage lights and everything that was going on. And to be able to film that and then put together this cinematic little introduction video for that school. Yeah. And then to film the show and piece that together. So I'm getting to like experience these dances that are created by other people and then re-putting them together visually for you to watch them back. So I'm part of that final piece that they get to see when they watch it back for years and years and years of their senior solo or, their group number. Oh, yeah. And, I'm the person that's putting together which camera they're going to be watching that from and what angle is going to make that the most powerful. And we do that with a 5 camera production. So like it's a whole lot. It's so much fun.
Man, that's crazy.
So, yeah, so my dance background and my videography background at some point collided, and that's part of what I'm doing now. So.
That makes you like a prime candidate to do that because you had the background in dance and the videography. So that's crazy how it lines up like that.
I'm telling you, when I tell you divine intervention, like there's so many parts of my story that are just like that, like little God winks that have happened. Dang. So I don't know how, I have no idea how it like, and by the way, I never aggressively went after dance schools. Like that was not something I even planned to do because like I know what it takes to do video. The productions are different. It's totally different. I'd never done it before. And somebody called me and was like, hey, we need a videographer. Actually, wait.
A random phone call out of the darkness.
Even more crazy, though. It wasn't, I guess, totally random. You remember that group that I told you, that community of videographers? Yeah, it was somebody else's gig, and they couldn't do it. And so they called me because that's how it works. And that's how I got into it. Yeah. So when I tell you it's a community, it's really a community. Yep. And that person's still like... he'll shoot with me for recitals too. Like, so he'll come in second shoot, shows that I'm done or picked up. So.
That's awesome. Look, right there. Power of networking. That's it.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, there are so many different opportunities that have come my way because of networking, just meeting people. In fact, I would venture to say that like probably 60% of my business is all word of mouth and networking.
Wow.
Because people hear about what I do from other people, and they find out about, our quality based on that word of mouth. That's the most powerful type of my degree's in advertising also, so that does help a little bit. But that's the most powerful form of advertisement is word of mouth. Like, people are going to put so much more weight in that in-person experience than they would. You need a landscaper, you're going to call your friend, but like, hey, who did you use?
Yeah, exactly.
You have a plumber that you need. You're going to call. You're not going to just go to Google and find some random person. You're going to ask your people first. And so it's so important to, as a new company, when we first started, that was one of my biggest things, was to make sure that everything that we were putting out was high quality. If there was ever any, quality issues, we tackled it right away. It was never, no, like, it was, I'll take care of it. You are the boss. I will make sure it's, you're happy. I want my clients happy. Because I wanted that word of mouth, that I wanted people to have good experiences and share those good experiences. And for me personally too, like, I am, how do I describe myself? I really love what I do, but I really like being good to people. And so I have had so many great experiences. People have taken so much care of me in my lifetime. And those people have really like changed the course of my life in the way that they dealt with me. People that whenever I was planning my wedding helped me have that dream wedding, even though I couldn't totally afford what they would cost. They help me out.
Oh, yeah.
And I had so many people that were like, oh, look, I can do this for you and I can help you. And that giving personality, that's so me. Like, I just want my clients to really feel taken care of. And like, I want to be that person that walks with them on whatever journey they are. And that journey was weddings a lot of times. I was working with a lot of couples, and that was really cool. But a lot of our commercial work now, we talked about those recitals, but I also do a lot of production work for missions and nonprofits. We also give discounts for those types of organizations that are altruistic, because that gives me purpose. Like, I really love being able to put together these videos. I work with there's a grief ministry in Breaux Bridge actually that reached out to us to do some productions for them. And so we started doing these documentary style, like, film testimonials for their
that's super cool, for
their website, to like basically talking about grieving process and parents who have lost children, like how they get through it. And so I started doing a lot of work with them, and that has branched out into like so many different things, like different projects that I've worked on. But it's super rewarding for me to be able to like give back in that way, to be able to give these families these videos. It means so much more than just dollars and cents. It's so much more than just video.
Oh yeah, it's like connecting on like a spiritual level.
Yeah, 100%. And meeting so many cool people. Like, that's what makes this my forever career. Like, this is what I love.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about the marketing and the word of mouth. That was like the biggest hurdle. I mean, I have not overcome it. I'm still tackling it myself, but that was a big thing that I'm trying to do with this right here, because, I sat so long, trying to work on my video games and all that stuff. But then it's like, I never spent any time or any research into the marketing thing. They just say like, oh, it's all mostly like social media. Right. And that is so, it seems like fickle, and like, you don't really know if you're like, things that you're putting out are actually getting seen. And I was doing like Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff.
All of those media platforms are now stacked against many people in a way, because
algorithms.
it used to be very organic when it first all came out. And so a lot of people were able to organically grow their business on Instagram, on Facebook. Yeah. And then these algorithms came in and they're like, well, you're a business, we're not going to help you. You have to pay us to help you now.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, look, I get it, because it helps. It has helped, but also they're about their bottom dollar. And so they're not going to give us anything for free. And so I noticed, I mean, when I tell you, I went from getting, I remember very vividly when the algorithm switched.
Really?
Oh, I remember the day. Like, I can go back and show you the post between the two posts.
Oh,
because
man.
I went from getting, anywhere from like, so I had a personal Instagram. Carly has her own Instagram for KSMB. I had a personal Instagram, and then I had my business Instagram, and then my son actually has an Instagram. That didn't happen for years, but I would get the same amount of likes on all of them. I would make a post and I would get the same amount of organic likes on all 3 different pages. Well, 2 of them are set up as business pages, and the other one is a personal page, right? the day the algorithm flipped, I remember posting, because I would post to all of 3 of them in different ways. My business pages went from getting hundreds of likes to 11. Hundreds to 11.
Horrifying.
At a time. And my personal page, still an average of 60. Everything I post, I get about 60 likes. And that's like a small, personal, organic Instagram, right? And so the fact that I went from like getting so many to like so little, and then it was consistently after that little, I knew that I had to shake it up and I had to do something, because I literally started researching, like, why am I not getting as many likes on Instagram? And then there was talks about the algorithm and talks about like how they would blacklist you if you put too many hashtags, like all these different crazy things. And I was like, this is insane. So of course, now that we've grown, thank Jesus, actually, this is all these blessings. So I just recently hired somebody for marketing and sales for my company, within my company, which is something I've never been able to do before. You know, because it used to be, when I tell you it started just me and my husband, this very mom pop videography production company, and we have grown. We have a lot of, most of our guys are like contract laborers because they also have their own gigs, which we love. And so I actually had a guy who came to us, his name is Brian Rodriguez, and he came to me wanting an internship for his college classes. And so the internship started as an opportunity for me to like teach him, but also I offered him a mentorship through my company. So he did that, and then he ended up getting hired to work for us doing like production and videography. And I firsthand trained him, and then also trained him how to start his own business, because I really want, like, I want to give people what I have. Like, you know, like people told me how they helped me get my start. And I don't want anybody to ever just like start in my company and feel they have to stay there. I want people to be able to be entrepreneurs too. Like I want them to have the freedom of life that I have. And that's more important to me than just like keeping people in my company. So I have a lot of contractors that I use, and they tell me what their rates are. I pay them what they're worth. And it's been such a really cool experience, like, as it's been growing. So
I can imagine that would be a huge load off of y'all's shoulders to have a dedicated marketing person, because like, as it stands, you already have to wear so many hats doing this, just you and your husband. I'm sure that it was just like a constant juggle of time. And then like the marketing thing is like, it seems invisible, right? Like it's not the product. Your product is all the things that you're focusing on so hard to think that you have to like then dedicate just about the same amount of time getting it out there. Otherwise the product almost, I mean, you know, it's different for what you're doing, but it's like, it's almost meaningless if eyes aren't hitting it. You know, you could be as good as it can be, but if it's not. Which is
so funny, because we are a photo video company. We're a production company. This is what we do. We build content for other people to put out there for commercial content, for other people to share their weddings and their memories and their things. This is what we do. We document content. The problem that I had was that because I was so busy documenting content, I never had time to share my own content. I looked at my Instagram. I would go months with not even sharing anything, like at all. And thank God for word of mouth marketing, because honestly, that was the only marketing we were doing for many, many years. Like there was like, I didn't pay for social media. I wouldn't do it because I didn't need to. Things have obviously changed, especially with the downturn in the, you know, the economy. It's been harder. So I've had to do a little bit more marketing, advertising, but also because it's so changing all the time, there's so many different rules, and there's so many different platforms that have their own set of rules. Having somebody like that's dedicated to the research on that, to be able to like know anything about anything. My marketing girl was telling me about how she was going to go into Google and do some geo-targeting and all these blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know anything about that. Luckily, that's what I pay her for. But, you know, like, and there's so many different rules. And so it was definitely overwhelming. And, you know, we're talking about businesses that, that start as hustles, side hustles. And that's really what this was. So I had every single hat on. My husband did. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're not just, people look at a videographer and they think, oh, she just edits pretty videos. Yeah. Okay. But, I'm also running the company. I've got to organize these timelines for these weddings. I've got to organize these project storyboards for these commercial clients. I've got to be on the phone. I've got to answer these people back. I've got to, there are so many different things that I have to do. And then I've got to actually report on my sales taxes every month. And then I've got to worry about this. And so I'm my own bookkeeper. When I tell you, if you list all the hats that
Oh yeah.
you know, a business owner who is just starting out by themselves has to wear. It's almost like you don't want to do it. Like if you listen to somebody who started, you're like, nope, not for me.
Yes.
That's how I felt at the beginning. Luckily, I had a lot of great mentors that helped me along the way with like the steps of how to do it, and it made it quite less overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely, and it was hard starting out, but in those small successes and like starting to grow that business, I've been able to like delegate the things that I'm less good at. So I'm not the best social media person. In fact, I'm not even a gearhead. You know how like some people in tech and in video, especially most guys that I work with, they are such gearheads. Like they love the gear. They're like, oh, this lens, it's so cool. And like they're telling me all about like all the different settings on this. And I'm like, I can make a pretty video and I can edit a pretty video. And I have all my guys that have to tell me about these things. I'm like, hey, I need a camera and this is what I wanted to do. And which one am I buying? Like, that's how it is now. Like I have so many people that I have to like contact about, because like, I mean, I know enough to get by and I know how to work my camera. Once I have the camera, I'm going to deep dive into like all the functionality of it. Like I know what I want. But you know, when I first started, that's really how it was. I remember for my mentorship, I literally told the guy, I was like, tell me what gear to get. Just tell me, give me a list of everything to buy. I'm going to buy it. I will learn it. Once I learn it, then I'll know what I need for, you know, upgrading. And it's kind of been that ever since. Like every time I need to upgrade equipment or I like need something else, like I call one of my guys that works for me and I'm like, hey, let's talk gear. And I ask a million questions. I'm like, okay, which one am I buying? Like, this is my budget. What am I doing?
Hell yeah.
And it's been really cool. But, you know, like it's that's not me. But having to wear all those hats, you often don't have time either. Like education and like that's really big for us in my business to continue your education, all these different things that we do. And so having people now that as I've grown to be able to like delegate some of those things too, so it's not all on my shoulders, has really been as rewarding as the work, you know. Fantastic. So it's not all on me.
The gear subject, that was a big thing. That was the first like big investment whenever my wife started doing her photography stuff, because we, you know, it's like you make that leap and then the first thing is like, okay, you can't do any of this unless you have the equipment, and the equipment is like not cheap, right? No. So then you want a good end product, so then you have to sink at least $1,000 into the first camera, and that's like on the low end.
That is, and, right.
And that's not even the lenses or anything else. And then
nope.
It was, I'm glad that we did do that, but it was definitely kind of spooky at first. But so do you I you know, in the little bit that I've done of researching about the videography thing, I saw that, you know, people talk about gimbals. Is that like a stabilization type equipment? Do you use those whenever you're?
So I actually am. We have them. And I have lots of guys that have them. All of my guys, I usually, when we run any job, it depends on what we need. And if we don't have it, we'll rent it. Because like we have these awesome rental companies now. So if there's a piece of gear that I don't have, I just go and rent it for the day for production. So if we've done music videos, and like sometimes they have these like real cool sliders and these big jibs and boom mics. And so the coolest part is that I can be a grandiose, huge production company if I want it to be, any day of the week, because I can rent all the gear that I need. I factor all that into the project. When they get their quote, that's going to include all the gear rentals that I'm going to need to be able to make that happen. So I don't necessarily have to own all that. Where do I even house all that stuff?
I was about to say, why wouldn't you? But then it's housing.
There's not enough space in the world to have all the things that I would need for all the different projects that I do. And I am definitely the type of person, like, you have an idea, call me. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to execute it. Like, I'm going to see it start to finish. And if I have to rent a bunch of gear to do it, I'm going to do it. And then if it's something that I'm like, man, I can't live without this piece of gear. Once I've tried it, I can keep it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can choose to keep it whenever I rent it. That's the best part about it. You literally just don't return it, and then you just pay the equipment off. And so I've gotten lots of different equipment in that way. But stabilizers specifically, it's so funny because I thought whenever I first started, I had to have one. Like, I was like, you have to have a stabilizer. Otherwise, you can't even be a wedding videographer, right?
Like shaky.
Yeah. Still to this day, 90% of the work that I do, I am not on a stabilizer. I am handheld or on a monopod. I like it more. I have more control over what I'm doing. I love a handheld. So there's so many different schools of thought to videography. So it just depends on what you need it for. I obviously would never go to like a music shoot without some sort of stabilization for certain things, because you need that beautiful gliding shot. And like, it just depends on what you're doing, right? For weddings though, I run so quickly. And so I will get told, it's the funniest thing for weddings. People will tell me all the time, you're doing such a great job. And I'm like, you haven't seen the product yet. Like, you have no idea. It could be black screen. You have no idea what I'm doing. But they will see me hustling and they'll be like, man, you are doing such a good job. Like, wow. Like, they see my work ethic. But also because I am known for that, I'm known for being able to hustle. I want to get the shot. It's more about getting what's happening than there's some videographers that like you'll watch their videos and you're like, oh, that's so cinematic and there's all these beautiful angles. But when you look back at the raw footage, it's only that. They only built that wedding in that way, right? They only had enough time to create those cinematic things to make that 3 to 5 minute feature film. You look at their raw footage for the bride. So I work for the bride and the groom and I want to make that cinematic film, but the bride and the groom also need to see and remember what happened their day. If I spend all my time building these beautiful cinematic shots that take a drone shot, which we love drone, but that's going to take me 15 minutes to get that drone in the air, establish the shots, get it back down, pack it up, and move to my next location. And so it takes so much time, right? Mm-hmm. So I am the type of person that I prioritize the story, right? I want to be able to see all the action. I want any moment that happens, I want to be able to get really, really wonderful story footage, no matter what's happening. So I film in a way that I can run and gun and move quickly and be able to capture all those things throughout the day and be able to build that story that is so special to the client and still have enough of those. So when we get there, we worry about all those B-roll, as much cinematic stuff as we can when we arrive. But then our actual storyline is geared to telling that story. And honestly, I found since we've moved in that direction from when I first started thinking that all I needed was a stabilizer and pretty pictures and getting all these, really great storyline type clips, it's been magical and the clients are so much happier. And great. Some of the handheld footage I shot, so that styled shoot, which if you haven't seen it, oh my God, it was so much fun. So I put out one of the videos, which there's another one that I'm working on. I have too many other jobs that I actually have to work on before I can get to it. But I was able to put kind of this vintage vibe video up. And it was completely handheld, but not only was it handheld, but I call it shooting dirty. Because like basically, when you're an artist, they tell you that in art school, especially, you're going to spend the first, 10 years as an artist learning all the rules, right? Learning about composition, learning about the lines, learning about, as a kid, you learn how to color in the lines. As an adult, you learn to color outside of the lines, right? You're going to start to, you learn the rules and then you spend the rest of your career learning how to break the rules in a way that is like aesthetically pleasing and cool, right? And so in video is the same thing for me. Like I learned all how to make these pretty pictures and establish all these amazing cool shots and to be documentary style, to be, this kind of style, editorial, to be able to accomplish these different styles and like learn the rules of those styles. And now that I've done it, for as many years as I have, I'm not going to say how many because we don't want to talk about how old I am. I've already talked about 3 different careers.
Don't want to deduce the age.
Yeah. We're not going to do that. But like now that I've done all those things, it's to try to break those, like the strictness of those different types of styles and like create whatever I think is cool. And so I decided to film dirty. And what I mean by that is, we were talking about frame rate earlier. You were talking about different types of frame rate. So I decided to try to shoot at 24 frames, but all day. Without slowing any footage down. So none of that like slow cinematic vibe, like all in 24 frames, which, so usually if you shoot in 24 frames, you don't slow it down, right? Because you don't have the data to do it. It makes it jumpy and jittery. So everything has to play as it is. And I shot handheld, which is even like it's shaky and crazy. Yeah. And then I shot with my shutter speed, not where it was supposed to be. So rather than leaving the shutter speed, so anytime you have your frame rate at like 24, you're supposed to double that. And that's your shutter speed. And so it's so weird when I started in videography versus photography, they were like, oh, you have a fixed shutter. Like you pretty much put it at double your frame rate and you leave it that way the whole day. And I'm like, wait, what? I can't use my shutter to like drop down, the exposure or increase it. Like, no, you just do that with your aperture and your ISO. And so I was like, man, this is crazy learning. But for that specific shoot, the styled shoot, I shot with my shutter super slow, so I had a lot of like dirty video drag to it, and it was very much like somebody who had no idea what the hell they were doing. Like, that's kind of the vibe. But when I put it together with these like old film, it was really freaking cool. And I was like, man, this is like. So I love the freedom of being able to like decide I wake up in the morning, I'm like, man, I'm going to do something cool and different and
feeling edgy today.
Yeah. And it was like, to me, super successful. I've had so many people talk like, and that was something when I first started, I would have never done because I needed a gimbal, I needed a stabilizer, I needed all these gear. In fact, I have these big rigs built out. Like, I mean, these big, huge, you know, you add all these different things, you put the gear on there, you put your monitor up top, you put all these things. It's heavy as hell. Can I say hell on your podcast?
Absolutely. Curse
so
if you want to.
It is heavy as hell. And so you're like running around and running and gugging with these big old rigs, but you can't, like, you have to slow down and you can't follow up. These brides move. Like, these photographers are booking it because the difference between photography is that you can take instantaneous photos, move, take another one, right? For us, we need 10 seconds of rolling footage. If I'm not stuck, set up in that spot to capture that footage as it's happening for 10 seconds, I'm going to miss it. And if I have this big ass rig, sometimes it's harder to do. You got to like really maneuver it. So I've stripped it all down, especially for weddings and for some, depending on the production gig. I don't show up with any of that stuff. I've literally disassembled it. I have it all in cases, and I show up with my camera, only the essentials. And, you know, I saw somebody, literally I watched a YouTube video and I gagged. But the guy was talking about how, like, oh, you know, you can't show up to video production with just this camera. And, you know, like, this is how you build out your rig. You have to have your camera and the this and the that, all these things that I have, and I've since taken off my camera. And he's like talking about how, like, this is how you can, you know, ask more money for your your production because now you look like a filmmaker. And I'm like, my videos will tell people that I'm a filmmaker. Like, they just need to see. And it's true. We do get mistaken for photographers all the time. And people ask me that, are you the photographer? Or, hey, take our picture. I don't care if people think I'm a photographer. They're going to see the video when it's done, because if they do think I'm a photographer, it gives me the opportunity to say, oh no, I'm the videographer. Do something fun for the video.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or like, hey, it's actually video. Can I do something fun with you? And then I'll create this moment. And now they have that. So I don't care about being confused for the photographer. It helps me. And so it's so funny if you see me out there and I look like I'm this new girl with just a camera and like very limited equipment. It's not because I'm cheap. It's not because I don't have the equipment. It's because I do better without it. Like, I get so much more emotion. Also, people don't know I'm the videographer, so they don't like duck the camera.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they're okay with the photographer just taking it. They just assume it's a photographer.
Candid moments.
So I get all these, like, I'm sneak attack sniping people and getting all the best footage. It's crazy.
Whenever they ugly cry, whenever the I do's come out.
Oh my God, I get that. I'm usually with this long lens in the back stable, and like I'm gunning all those things. But yeah, it's fun. So yes, we have them. No, we don't always use them. That was a really long explanation for that one question.
That's great. Yeah, it filled all the gaps. Do you have like a bag of like all the different lenses that you use?
That I do. That is the one thing that I will not compromise on a shoot. Like, if I'm going to bring a lot of gear. So
how many lenses do you typically use on a single?
It's bad. It's bad, a lot. Yeah. So I typically have two main lenses that I shoot throughout the day. My 24-70 is super versatile. So like, I can get, that wide full room shot, but then I can also get, like if they're like, I can tighten in quite a bit if they're a lot further from me. And then I also have my Nifty 50 or a 55. It's a Zeiss. It's my favorite.
Nifty 50. I like that.
So I have those. I have a couple of, actually I have 2 or 3 Nifty 50s because like I have different cameras and I need them.
Did you coin that term or did you
No,
adopt
that's
it?
definitely a YouTube somewhere it came from, but I'm sure it's not coined. You can definitely go, you can take credit for it. But it's like a photography term, I guess. But and actually my Nifty 50 was my very first lens because that's what the natural eye, like the focal length like of the normal eye, it seems the most natural. Like, it's the most natural lens to what we normally see. And so it's also very versatile because it's nice enough to be able to get like that portraiture where you can have that like bokeh in the back. It's really cool where you can have that like fuzzy background, but you can also still get enough of the room to feel natural. But yeah, so I definitely have my 50. I have a few of those. I have a 35 that I use as a macro lens, especially to like get like detail shots of like rings and stuff. That's a really good lens. And it's also good to like just have kind of a wider shot in the room. I also have a 70-200 that I use for both photography, but also for videography to like really get super far. It's more like a telephoto thing, but you have to have some sort of stabilization for that, and it's so heavy. It's not like gimbal stable. Like, you have to have like a tripod or a monopod or something. Because it's definitely very heavy and very large. So it's like so large, in fact, that like normally I have to have a tripod and like an extra arm to like hold the lens too, to make sure it like is totally stable. Wow. Otherwise it'll take a nosedive. It's very robust. And then also one of my favorite little lenses in my bag is a 10 to 18, 10 to 20. I'm not sure. It's like a super like fisheye kind of wide angle lens, and it's super fun, especially for weddings where like everybody's dancing on the dance floor. So they do this thing where people, if I can make a PSA, if you're at a wedding and everybody's in a circle, turn your butt to the circle and look at the videographer. No, I'm just kidding. But like seriously, everybody gets in a circle and like we're shut out. So like unless we're on top or underneath, we can't see what everybody's seeing. It's impossible. Like it's so hard. And they always do it. Like they group up in this little circle and they're like all vibing. And I'm like, I can't see.
So you need like a selfie stick to stick over the top of them.
We do have that. In fact, I use my mono. That's why I love my monopod, because it's not like a gimbal where it's like stuck right here. I can literally shoot that thing 7 foot on top of me, turn my LED to me, and I can get what's happening with that monopod. It's one of my favorite things. And then I got a fisheye because I literally will like slide on the floor. The dirt. Yes, I will. I am that dirty videographer that will get underneath the people, and I will shoot from underneath that like crazy chaos that's happening, and I will video from underneath. I'll literally be under there with a light spotlighting the group underneath with a wide angle lens, just videoing this craziness from underneath them. And it never fails. It's always like people are like, I love that shot, it's so cool. And
probably
like
hypes them up even more to see that shit go down.
Definitely. We filmed that way. I was literally on the floor. I was wet when I got up. I mean, there was beer all over me. It was terrible. I don't know why I do it to myself, but I was like, it's worth the shot. So I was like literally on the floor underneath, and that was the song Thunder. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever heard it? Thunder.
Oh, yeah. AC/DC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, they were going around. Every time they say thunder, you have to drink. It's like a drinking game at a wedding. So they go, and have you ever counted how many times they say thunder?
Lot.
A whole lot. And you have to drink until the next time they say thunder, right?
Oh, wow.
So they're going around the circle, and sometimes, like, thunder, thunder.
Trash.
Like, you know, so they're going around the circle, and, like, we have this cool footage from underneath this circle as they're, like, water falling beer and stuff all the way around. It's really cool. It's a lot of we get to do a lot of cool fun projects. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and I'll totally see if I can find like a direct link to some of these videos that you're talking about, like the styled shoot one. I'll put that one in the thumbnails or the tags in this video so people can check it out.
Definitely.
Yeah, that video in particular, I had watched it right after the styled shoot, and then whenever I started doing all the research into actually, a little dabbling in the videography, I watched that video that you did again through a new lens, and I was like, man, this is like really good. Like, before I couldn't appreciate the different things that you put into it. So then, it gave me a new appreciation for sure.
That video especially was really cool because, so it was a Taylor Swift styled shoot, right? And so the problem with a lot of our music video, not the problem, but one of the things, the challenges that I had whenever I first started, so many people would ask me like, hey, can you use this specific wedding song or this specific stuff? And because of copyright infringement, we're not allowed to unless I can license it, right? And that's extremely expensive. No couple is about to drop $2,000 on licensing a Taylor Swift song. It's not gonna happen. And I'm not doing it for a styled shoot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have that kind of, I'm a big budget now, but not that big.
T Swift gonna get that money.
Yeah, and you listen, she tried to wait. So our company name is Evermore Stories. And there is another company, a film company that uses Evermore something. And because she has an album, like music with Evermore in the title, she like tried to sue them. Like her people tried to sue that person. And they had to prove that they were already established before Taylor Swift came out with Evermore. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I kind of wish she would have tried to sue me though. Cause I was like, man, I've been around for a long time. Like, couldn't you have sued me? Like that would have been great publicity. Like me and T Swift got it together. Like we're the same mind. But wasn't me, but it's okay. But so that was a big challenge. We couldn't use, like, for the styled shoot, I couldn't use Taylor Swift music, but there was a live musician, and so it was really cool because I met with a saxophone player. His name was David Mouton.
I had him on the show like 3 episodes ago.
He's so cool. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, could you please, like, if you could play a Taylor Swift song for me, then I can use your live version because it's not copyright infringement because you're playing it live. And so I was like, interested, and this is the day of, and I'd actually talked to Abby kind of about it, and I was like, man, it'd be really cool to have the sax player like maybe play a song, but we didn't know if we could do it live. Get there, it's already a crazy day, and so I talked to him about the project, and so we let him hear a couple of different Taylor Swift songs. This guy figured out a saxophone, like he figured out a way to cover that set, like with a saxophone in an hour, and he was able to put that together. And so I threw some audio equipment on him, we recorded it literally right there. And I was able to use that as the audio for that video. And actually your wife inspired the man who's talking. It's like an old lecture on love.
Yeah.
And it's really such a cool vibe. And it was, when I was putting it together, so we like to use audio, and because it was styled shoot and they're not an actual couple, there was like no vows, no letters, so there was not any audio to draw from. And they didn't have, this couple specifically didn't have a wedding party, it was just the couple, so there wasn't like people hanging out and laughing, and like I couldn't draw from any real natural audio, and that's like a video killer to me. Like, you know, when you're putting together a video, the audio is really what tells the story. Evermore stories, I can't put out it didn't have a story. And so that was like a kind of another struggle for me. And so I had spent an entire day looking up different like audio. I was looking up different poetry monologue. And yes, I was like looking up all these things on YouTube, and I couldn't find anything that I liked that didn't already have music in the background, that like I needed just the audio, right? And there was nothing to draw from. And so I was very devastated about it. But then I found some like old, like a pastor kind of talking about, you know, marriage and love. And so I used that, I put that on and I sent it to Abby, and I was like, like, what do you think? Because like at least I had something. It was from a wedding that they just had raw footage, so I wasn't going to be using that audio. And so we put that in first, and like then I was like, Abby, but you know, so one of the guys in the style shoot was actually, he's a gay gentleman, and I have this pastor talking about love, and I was like, I don't know, that could be like a conflict of interest. Like I feel like he might not enjoy. I was like, you think that would bother him? You know, like I don't know. And he was, you know, as part of the style shoot. So I was like, I don't know. I got in my head about it. And so your wife actually recommended the lecture, and she's like, what about this? And I was like, oh my God, like it's like she had pulled it out of my own brain, and like that's exactly the vibe I was going for, especially with that like vintage kind of feel. And so she inspired she actually found the audio that I used for that video, and it was such a good, me and your wife, I could team up with her literally any day of the week. Like she's such a cool person. So it's definitely one of my more fun works, especially because like there was no pressure. I could just do what I wanted and like create a video that I wanted to put out. And it was really cool. That was a cool project.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's interesting whenever you get on to like, because I had a monologue idea for this album. I'll show it really quick. I keep referencing it, but this album that I had done as a solo album a while back, the title track on it, I was writing it about like technology and all this stuff coming back to bite us in the future and all that stuff. But I had
that's such a cool vibe. I'm excited to listen to this.
I know, right? But then so I was working still at my dad's place at the time, living in my apartment whenever I was writing that, and the inspiration hit me at like 11 at night to use a monologue, and I scoured and I finally found one on YouTube. I ripped it off of YouTube. It was a speech by Isaac Asimov, who was like the father of robotics and all this shit. And
super cool.
That video was like an hour long, and I needed to fill like 10 second gaps and all this stuff. So I wanted it to have a certain message, so I scoured the whole thing, and his speech was like talking in a positive light about robotics and the future, a bright future, and I like chopped it up to make it sound very ominous. And so it drove me so hard to get it done, and like the inspiration was there. I stayed up to like 2 a.m. on a work night just because I was like, I cannot interrupt the flow. This has to happen. It was magic.
So that actually, that feeling of like, this is like, I'm in the grind of it and like, I can't stop. That happens so much in like, because I'm playing with audio and like telling these stories, and that's literally how it is. Like it will take me so long to start a project, and it's so crazy because we just have so much work that's coming in and lots of different types of work. But these wedding videos that I put together, when I tell you like start to finish, it usually takes me 2 or 3 days, and like it's done, because once I start, I literally can't stop.
Tunnel
I'm like
vision
in it, like, but it takes me a minute to get it to that point where I can start. Like, so there's a lot of like pre-production that happens. Like I have to like clean up the audio, and I'll usually go through and like find different sound bites and like listen to it all in one day. So like there's some pre-production that happens before, but once I'm in the editing bay and I'm just like really attacking, and that story hit me, and like I know what I want to happen, it's like that, like almost instantaneous, like divine intervention for real.
Yeah,
so it's so awesome. It's such a blast. So
well, I usually have a cooking segment on this show that is a random little segment that I've fully embraced by now, because it usually has come up in every episode before then, so I just made it part of the show. So
I love it.
Do you have a favored dish that you like to cook?
So I have favorite dishes that I like to cook, but there is one dish specifically that everybody seems to love when I cook it. In fact, we have a foreign exchange student that's living in our house, and like that's her favorite food. We've asked her, and it's pork and sausage and rice and gravy.
Hell yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like it seems so simple, but like everybody that I cook it for. So I'm a little different though. So it's not just like pork and gravy, right? Have you ever had sticky chicken?
Yes, I have.
Do you know the concept of sticky chicken? How you like sugar the bottom of the
Caramelizes when you brown it.
Okay, so I do that with pork before I put it in. So I caramelize my pork and like I get that like nice sugar brown on it, and then I pull it all out of the pot, and then I'll brown my onions in that, and like I get my onions ready, and then I throw in some bell peppers. I'm not a celery person, so I'm sorry, I'm not doing it, but I get all my onions, and like I smother that for a good long time, and then I take my sausage fully whole, I throw it in the pot with some water and like let it cook.
Smoked or fresh sausage?
Everything. I do both. I like fresh sausage, and because like I like the taste of it and like what it does to the pot, but then I also like a good smoked sausage too, so I put both
for
typically.
The flavor,
Yep, just to add it in, which is why it's so freaking good, because it's got everything in there. And then I'll take the sausage out, I'll chop it up, I'll put it back in, and then I put my pork in, and then I'll like cook that down until it's like beautiful and wonderful and like got this nice gravy.
And tender.
But it's kind of sweet and savory, so it's like and the meat, I cook it till it's like super falling apart.
That's one of those dangerous meals where it's like you know you're full, but it's like you could just keep eating it.
It's like, so it's rice and gravy, but like,
oh yeah, the like, flavor profile is full, the sweet and
like
savory
dessert. So if you've never tried that, like sticky chicken but sticky pork, and like build your pork and gravy, it's that that's my favorite dish.
I'm totally gonna have to try that out. Where's the foreign?
Wait, so I don't know what you're doing Sunday, but we have a going away party for Allie.
That's the foreign exchange student.
Sunday, yes, this Sunday. And you and Abby are welcome to come, and I'll be cooking that because it's her going away, so she has to have it. So I'll be cooking a huge pot of it, and you and the kids are more than welcome to come, and then you can tell everybody on your next episode how it
I'll report back in if we end up hitting that up. Appreciate the invite,
yeah, for sure.
Where's this person from, the foreign exchange student?
She's from Spain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she's actually, so when she first came in, she came to a bunch of weddings with me, and like that was her, like I introduced her to our culture by doing that. Like I'm in the wedding industry, and so it was so fun for her to see like, how we have weddings, and she's like, we don't do any of that. America's crazy to her. She's constantly like, what is this? She's like, y'all are wild. We're very indulgent, commercial, everything, like we're buying all this crazy stuff. She's like, we don't
drive everywhere instead of walking everywhere.
Yes. Well, we also we were laughing just recently because for the holidays we have to coordinate our outfits for like the holidays and for certain things, and so of course I would buy her an outfit to coordinate with our family because she can't come with us to our family event and not have matching pajamas when it's pajamas, and because for Christmas we all wear matching pajamas, and for all the holidays we coordinate. It's not all the same color, but we all coordinate, so we kind of blend. And so she started like getting these extra outfits, and she's like, man, y'all must really love me. I'm like, I do love you, I do, but I also am like all about a color scheme matching. Like it's all gotta go, it's gotta vibe. We gotta take a family picture and look
that's great.
She thinks that we're crazy. But she loves it. She's already asking her mom and dad. She's like, Mom, maybe y'all could like make a trip to America. Y'all could try New Orleans out, and then like y'all could just drop me off at Miss Donna, Miss Grant's, and like y'all can go to New Orleans, and like I'll just hang out here and eat rice and gravy. So it's been fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I do also usually ask about what your favorite video game might be, but I'm not sure if you've dabbled in video games in your day.
So yes, but all the video games that I ever played have been old school because once I hit adulthood, so I would only play video games.
Please go ahead and tell, because I've got the 80s shirt, 85 with the NES right here.
So I love Paperboy. That's still one of my favorite games. Like I love old school Paperboy. I also loved a ton of Sega games. Like we had a Sega, and so I had actually a Little Mermaid Sega game.
Really?
Yes.
Was it as hard as the Lion King Sega game? Because that was like unbelievable.
They had all these little like tadpole things that were those little eels from the movie. You had to go and find them and collect them everywhere. And yeah, man, those levels were hard. I was a kid, like I was little, but like, man, they were not giving us any graces. Like you couldn't just like beat that game in a day. I would play the same level like for months.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I don't even think I ever did beat that game, as a matter of fact, like if I'm honest, but that was one of my favorites. Obviously Mario, because Mario Kart, like all the Mario, I've played all the Mario games. But yeah, those are probably my favorite. All the old stuff. And the Atari, like there was my grandmother had this old Atari. So even after all the, PlayStations were coming out, we would still go to her house and play all those Atari games. Yeah. And the ones where you like shoot the little, like a little
alien invader type game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the Tetrisy one where you have to like knock the blocks off. And that was like so much fun for me. It was like other things. People were playing, all these, like the PlayStation, I don't know, 2 or 3 had already come out.
You're still
out of the
that.
Atari. Like it's so much more fun for me. But I was better at it because it was so much more simpler. Once they started adding all these buttons, like I never had time to learn that. Though I freaking love just jamming buttons whenever I was playing
the fighter type games.
Yes, 100%. I had Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Like those are my jams.
Nobody can beat you because they don't know your strategy. It's
just random. I didn't even know my strategy. But I had an older brother, and it was always his games, and so he was actually like really good at all that stuff, and I would just like sit there.
Yes, button
terrible.
mash.
I don't even want to see the face I just made, but that's pretty much how it was.
I remember whenever we first got our Sega, I played this shit out of it. That was a fantastic console. Vector Man and what was it, Toe Jam and Earl, the funkiest bass line ever to be present in a video game. It's fantastic. If you've never heard of that game, look up the bass line. You'd swear Bootsy Collins made it himself. Funkadelic. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Do you have any like final words you'd like to give the audience?
Honestly, no. I mean, I think we talked forever and covered quite a bit, but I appreciate you. I think that it's really cool what you do. I think it's really cool that you like bring businesses on here. So I think if I have anything left to say, it's thank you. I think this is a really cool podcast, and I can't wait to share it and like let people, open up to see what you're doing here. I think it's really cool. I love the content. So keep it up.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's been real. Thank you, Donna. Y'all have a good one. Peace out.